surrounded by educators, and they told me if I didn't behave, they'd put me in the corner. I thought it would be appropriate we have a moment of silence for our 41st president. Almighty God, we come to you today and give thanks for all of our teachers. Thank you for the way in which they give of themselves each and every day in the classroom, serving and instructing the next generation of leaders of this land. We thank you for them all now. Thank you for looking after our school district. Thank you that you love each and every one of us here. Help us to learn, play, and share together so that the wonderful world you have made becomes more beautiful every day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Valerie, do we have any special birthdays this morning for December?
When I call your name, please stand. The following Rotarians have enjoyed another trip around the sun. Please join me in wishing them a very happy birthday. We have Chad Stuckey, Craig Reaver, Doug Brightly, Gordon Chance, Elijah, I don't think Elijah is here, and J.P. Raynoff.
Let's sing.
Birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Rotarians, happy birthday to you, and they live down in our valley.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, hold on.
No.
We have just a real quick, just the first verse. We forgot Christine. Okay? And the reason we forgot Christine is she probably didn't put her information in Rotary.
Birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Rotarians, happy birthday to you, and may you live down in our valley.
Thank you, Rick.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's why I'm Christina, because I'm 2 days before Christmas. Now you'll always remember. Now you'll call me
Good morning,
Holly.
everyone. Good to see everyone here today. We have a number of guests here this morning. So, but I was told that I have to do this paid non-political announcement that our guests are supposed to be wearing this tag. John Bruce, do you want to say anything about this? I was just
Well,
told.
it has their name on there, so when somebody's sitting next to you, you can look at them and see what their name is, and be kind of polite, I thought. But, you know,
Excellent idea.
yeah, I just came up with an office.
And it goes without saying that if you don't do it, there will be fines, right, Don?
Absolutely, the person who brought them will be fine.
We have guests today, starting with a visiting Rotarian, Diane Davidson, who is president-elect of the Whitehall Club. Where's Diane today? Thank you, Diane. Our other guests are Galiano Pasleta, guest of Valerie Deneen. Where is Dr. Sabrina Taylor, guest of David Dunn.
So Dr. Taylor is kicking the tires on Rotary Club. She wishes to join. So it's a question of joining our club or the Allentown West Club.
Oh, no.
I thought I'd just make that point. And I told her that JP would behave today. So.
Well, that's a lot.
Thank you, David.
It's a lot to ask, guys.
Thank you. Andrea Grimm is here. Andrea is from the Emmaus Lioness Club. And John Bereniak, also from the Emmaus Lions Club, guest of Rick Zayas. We often do both of them, our partners here in town. Barbara Roberts. Where's Barbara Roberts? Certainly the very better half of Pete Roberts. And Ann Peasley, by somebody guest of me. I'm not sure who me is.
standing, Ann, or actually, if you wouldn't mind standing. Our two newest, one oldest member who's returning is Ann Peasley, and Laura, and we got, if I ever get this right, Ashley, forgive me. She's the Executive Director of Emancipation Partners, working with Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. And we all know Ann, and welcome her back, please. A little hand of applause. All right, we're going to move forward with some announcements, and we're going to start with Uncle Bob Halsey first. I think JP's going to help him out. Bob, did you make it yourself?
I stay up all night, every time I think I've known everything about my wife after 56 years of marriage, she comes up with something else. This is a quilt that she's made for Christmas for our granddaughter, Peyton Halsey. These are just some of the teams she's played for since she was 6 years old. The backing is purple, the whole back is purple, and that's because she's going to Northwestern University. She's sort of aware we're making this, but she doesn't know that what it is or where it's been. You're the only people who have seen it except Edie and I. So we're going to give it to her for Christmas. And don't ask my wife to make it. It took her 3.5 months to make it. So this has got all the teams she's played for that we could find shirts for. Okay. Thank you.
For those of you who are guests, we've been hearing about his granddaughter for the last 15 years. So it's really nice of him to bring it in.
This is almost the end.
So you're 2 years.
Okay, guys, a couple more announcements, please. Before,
You get upset at your age, just start
Ralph,
finding
come on up.
everything.
Tell us how we did, buddy.
We got 2 full boxes of food, and we got $66 in cash. Sure. So we'll do the pay. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, Ralph. Okay, so 2 things, guys. I know this is a little early for March 3rd, 2019. Michael Hannes works with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They're doing a bowl-a-thon fundraiser for the kids. I'd like to get a Rotary team together, 400 members, I don't care. Guys, it's a fun day to help go out and help the kids for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Keep it on your radar. Oh, Alicia.
I broke 100.
As I have mentioned before, March 7, 2019, we're celebrating International Women's Day by giving an award to a Rotarian who exemplifies Rotary, and a community woman who has also done a lot for our community. Today you receive an envelope. Thank you, Dee, for all the work. That gives you information about nominating a community person. I've also mailed letters to all the presidents and Rotaries in areas 1 and 2, asking them to nominate a Rotarian, and Rick will also review, will be getting a letter. If anyone has a recommendation for a Rotarian award, we'll be glad to give you the information. But we're primarily asking you as our club members to nominate someone from the community by January the 24th. So you have all the information. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask any of our committee members, and I will be asking next time other folks to help us put it on the website. Thank you.
So quick question, Alicia. Are we nominating anybody, or are we nominating women?
No, thank you. We're nominating women. Thank you. Thank you. It's to celebrate International Women's Day.
All right, so get that right, folks. No male, no males. This is for women only. All right, guys. Any announcements from the floor? Go south.
Yeah, I just want to make an announcement last year, the offer still stands. I have some very large Fraser fir Christmas trees. They're free to any Rotarian. I will deliver them. You just gotta come and pick it out, cut it down, and I'll deliver it. Some are very large. If you don't need a large tree, you cut it down. down and tuck you off the top. It's up to you. I'll just say that, so you know.
Thank you, Sal. And we're going to, Megan. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
It's okay. I just wanted to make a friendly reminder to like our Facebook page, like and share and invite your friends, and like and share our post at Valentine page. It's really awesome post, very positive things to add to our Facebook feeds. Thank you. And also, you can now check in to the Emmaus Rotary Club. So when we're having our breakfast, you go onto the Emmaus Rotary Club page, just press check in, and then they'll know you're here. I'll start the word. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. You had your chance.
Sorry. If you did not receive an envelope, there's a box out there that Dee just put out there with all the envelopes if you didn't receive them. Please pick it up, because we will be mailing the others to whoever was not here. Thank you, Dee, again for all the work.
Thank you, Alicia. Is there any other announcements from the board? Steve?
Rick obviously got up way too early today. First thing, mark your calendars, January 31st and February 7th. Those are the 2 dates that Brookside Country Club is closed, and we're going to be having off-campus. Sure enough, someone always drives up this driveway on one of those 2 dates because they don't read the trumpet. So I thought that since we have a big gathering this morning, I'd let you know that. Specifically on the 31st is going to be the Interact meeting. It's going to be at the Emmaus High School from 5:30 to 7. And then on the 7th, this is a little bit different, but we have rented out the Emmaus Movie Theater. The meeting's still going to be at 7:30 in the morning, and it's going to be on we're going to show a 38-minute movie on Fix-It Healthcare. Correct, Bill? Where are you? Did I say it correct? Fix-It Healthcare. So we'll give you that much to kind of chew on, but just know that that day, the meeting's going to definitely run a little bit longer. I think it's going to run probably about an hour and 15 minutes. So plan accordingly for that. Definitely come out. I think that's going to be a fun venue. We're going to have a little bit of a different type of breakfast that morning. And then my next announcement is about the Emmaus, the golf tournament that we had. If you had anybody that supported you in any way by being a sponsor, we have more thank you letters up here. The feedback that I'm getting, thanks again to Val, from anybody that's receiving one of these handwritten cards has been phenomenal. That's only going to help us get them back next year as a sponsor. So if you need some thank yous, they're up here on the front table. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
So dues are due. This is the week to get your dues in. Some of you paid full dues last July, so if you got an email from me a couple weeks ago, you owe dues, please mail it to me, hand it to me next week's meeting, or do whatever.
Thank you, Jim. So, guys, I'm so proud of this club. I don't say that often. This week, we voted as a board to help the 3 families this year for Christmas. I handed 2 $500 gift cards to Laura Bro for 2 families in East Penn School District, one in the high school and one in the elementary school. And Steve's working with Lehigh, what's it?
Pediatric Cancer Foundation of Lehigh Valley.
Cancer Foundation of Lehigh Valley. We're supporting a family with them. So please give yourself a hand of applause. You guys are fantastic. Next year we'll get it coordinated a little bit earlier, and we actually get some ideas about gifts that we can provide to families also. So, but again, thank you.
I have to find out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rick.
And if I win, we can do it. Okay? Go, Rory. We have the 50-50 raffle, which really isn't a 50-50 raffle. Oh, you didn't get it.
I didn't take a ticket either.
It's all right, I have to.
973.
We're increasing our
Yeah, we did.
She gave me the wrong ticket. I'm 9-by-1.
979.
Yes.
Yes.
I told you I had the ticket.
Eileen, you can buy Christmas presents now.
Yeah.
$1 each?
Oh, that's bad. Can I read it?
Okay,
it is 968.
I told you.
Gordy, congratulations. All right, Sergeant Arms, you're up.
Is it a round of applause, or what you call it?
Don't even start, okay? It's been a rough night.
No, I must have lent it to somebody already.
It's an American Ukrainian.
Ukrainian, got it. Tony, I'm glad you're here. You owe me $5 for that gorgeous picture of your backside. Little library that you're promoting, so that's $5 to you. Jeff is leaving early. Mark was late. Ashley Laura is learning what late means, so she'll be on time next week.
Does that mean you didn't find her?
I didn't find her, no.
No, fine.
Fine, oh.
F-I-N.
She's not lost.
No, she was right under the wire. Yeah,
She's just got a verbal reprimand.
I'm gonna go over to this table. There's somebody there that John likes to pay fines for his table. So there is Christina, who didn't fill out the information so that we knew it was her birthday, so we had to sing it twice.
Oh, man.
So,
I paid him back my $2 this morning.
and Eileen doesn't have a pin on, so right now we're up to 4 at that table, John. How you doing so far?
Pretty good.
You got it covered?
I paid my fine. Don't charge him again.
You weren't supposed to tell him that.
Is it the truth?
We're all concerned. And Jeff, we love to have you here, but you were still a little bit late too.
Here you go.
All right. Look at that, John. You don't have to pay her fine. Take care of that for you.
Important thing is you know my birthday now.
You're not getting a card.
December 23rd, right? December 23rd.
Any happy dollars out there?
I have somebody
Oh,
who's
the
been
hands are
December
rolling.
my
JP, we'll
30th.
start with you.
I have 2 sets of happy dollars. The first trimester report cards arrived last evening. So I'm proud to say that despite all odds, James Francis squeaked it in with a 95 general average to make his first high honors.
Wow.
Catherine had 99s in every subject except for 2. She had a 98 in one and a 96 in the other, which got her a 98 general average, which was the highest average in the entire 7th grade.
Wow.
And when I asked her, I said, was that the highest? She says nobody else was even close, Pop. But still mad because she had a 96 in science. And she said, you know, that's just unacceptable, so how long are you going to ground me for the 96? She's a high achiever. The other half of the happy dollars is my wife asked me to do this. My wife and Catherine on Cyber Monday went shopping in beautiful downtown historic Bethlehem and visited Joanne's hand-cut crystal store. My wife wanted me to let everybody know what a wonderful place it is, how gracious and hospitable Joanne was to them. She got a lot of nice things there, and that everybody should go shop there, because not only is it a great store, but she's also a great lady and a great retainer.
Thank you.
I have several happy dollars. The first one is for Tina's youngest son, Jason. Jason received straight A's. He received a nice commendation letter from Dr. Maury, the principal of the Willow School. The second happy dollar is for my granddaughter, Ella, who also received straight A's in the 4th grade at Willow School and received a nice letter from Dr. Maury. They really appreciate those letters. I think it's great. They show it to everybody. My third happy dollar is for my granddaughter, Ashley, who received high honors in the 8th grade over at Ayer, and also for my grandson Carter, Tina's 3rd child, who received high honors in the 7th grade over at Ayer. And the 5th happy dollar is for my daughter Tina, who received her 11th straight A in her MBA program at DeSales and is scheduled to graduate next November with high honors.
A happy dollar. I'd like to welcome John Purianic
We're fellow classmates from Central Catholic 1967. Why he went to the dark side of the Lions, I don't know, but they do have a fabulous night at the races that we participate in. I think it's in March, and it's really a really well done night, and it's a lot of fun. Nice to see you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon.
As all committee chair people know that you can't get the work done without the people in the committee. So one happy dollar to Dave Dunn for getting the letters ready for our celebration. One happy dollar for Dee for getting the mailing ready for our celebration. These are more personal. One happy dollar for my husband and I just spending a wonderful, wonderful week in Los Cabos, in Mexico, Baja California. One happy dollar for my grandson who is 10 months old yesterday, was 10 months old yesterday. And one happy dollar for my almost 6-year-old grandson who's in Montessori, the smartest kid in Montessori.
Just $2 happy for our guest speaker. We have the best superintendent we could possibly have asked for, Kristen Campbell.
I have an announcement about retirement. This pregnant Florida, you can now laugh for those who know me. Seriously, Jeff Boyer, who left, was kind enough to loan this book to me. It's called The New Retirement Mentality. I loaned Jim Conquest, who read it. Anybody's interested in reading it, it's a new approach on retirement, which quite frankly is a model I'm following, coincidentally. But if you want to borrow it to read it, be my guest. We're going to circulate it on the club for those who are interested.
For some of us.
If you're already retired, it's too late.
All right, unfortunately, we have a long program. We're going to take one more. Diane, go ahead.
So I have one happy dollar just because I'm happy to be here visiting Maze Rover. I've heard great things about your club. And the second happy dollar is because I'm going to be celebrating my 15th wedding anniversary with my husband on Saturday.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we have a great program.
Okay, so Doc, there's not even any comparison, Doc, there's no comparison between Allentown West and our breakfast is better than their food. Okay?
That's a great
And the people are nicer. All right, without further ado, I'm going to have Steve introduce our guest speaker.
And the programs are super impressive here at the Maze Rotary. Maze Rotarians, good morning to you. We've had a great couple programs within the education platform the last couple of weeks. Our speaker today, I've gotten to know over the years, and I feel very honored to introduce her today. She's quite dynamic, and she's worked her way all the way up to the super at East Penn School District. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Kristen Campbell.
Good morning, and I am incredibly honored to be here this morning. And I also want to share, I'm a really quick learner, so when I knew when I was coming in front of the audience, I brought money just in case.
I'll get it.
Just leave it right there. Again, I'm Kristen Campbell. I am incredibly honored to be your guest this morning, and I am equally as honored to continue my leadership path in the East Penn School District. I will start off, and it's great as I look around the room, a room of friends. There are many, many familiar faces, some of whom I've spent an incredible amount of time with over the course of my career. I think you all know me. I don't like to talk about myself, but I did want to just give you a little bit of context in terms of who I am, what I bring to the school district, what I bring to the school community. This is my 24th year in public education. So through and through, I am wholeheartedly devoted to public education. And what's my journey is quite interesting in that, as Steve described, my entire 24-year career in education is also in the East Penn School District, which in sort of the somewhat tumultuous path that public education has taken maybe in the past 2 decades. I think that's somewhat of a unique thing, and also just in terms of school leadership and leadership in general, to remain in the same position. I just feel incredibly blessed and fortunate for those great experiences. And I attribute it all to an incredibly supportive school community, as well as some great mentors with whom I've worked throughout my time in East Penn. I started my journey in 1995 as a teacher at Shoemaker Elementary, so I heard some mention of Shoemaker Elementary, and then had the opportunity to be an assistant principal at middle school, which, as you can all appreciate, middle school is such an amazing time in young people's lives, and I really loved it. Although now that I have a daughter who's going through middle school, I'm like, totally different when you're on the other side. And I then had the opportunity, probably one of the greatest leadership opportunities of my career. I was the principal at Lincoln Elementary School in Emmaus for 5 years, before then moving on to central office administration, where I served as assistant superintendent, and now as of July 1st, superintendent. And yes, we've had our first flood ever in the history of the school district and some other firsts. But I say baptism by fire, and we look at all challenges as opportunities. So the other perhaps important piece about me is I'm also a resident of the community, and I'm a parent of 2 wonderful daughters, one of whom I mentioned is an adolescent right now, but I still love her to death and know that she'll come out together. So I have a daughter who's a 6th grader at Iyer Middle School, and a daughter who is a 2nd grader, a Spitfire at Shoemaker Elementary. And my husband and I are residents of Lower Macungie Township, and just fully committed to the district, the community, and all that we have to offer. So I'm thrilled to be here this morning. My goal for this morning is to really tell the story of the East Penn School District from a high level overview. So I did get some feedback from some of the board members, some of the Rotarians, regarding what are some of the things in which you're interested. So I hope that everyone takes away like a kernel of something new or interesting that you maybe didn't know about. And certainly am happy for any members of our team to return or provide you with more information at a later point in time. So we are going to talk a little bit about budget. We'll also talk, I really want to focus on some of the great accomplishments and educational programs that we offer because of community support, such as through Rotary at the East Penn School District. So some of these, and I want to also apologize, because we are going to talk about our commitment to technology and how that improves teaching and learning, and there are black lines on the screen, and we really are not quite sure.
We're not blaming that on the school district.
Yeah. And that is not a special effect as part of my presentation. I just wanted to say that as well. But I do want to start off by just providing you with some background information in terms of who we are. We have about 8,000 students in the East Penn School District. Serving those 8,000 students, we have about 500 teachers, as well as 500 support staff who do amazing things for kids every single day. So relatively speaking, in the Lehigh Valley, we are a pretty large size district. We have 7 elementary schools. As you know, I've heard some mention of those throughout your meeting this morning. Some of our buildings are as large as Willow Lane, and Dr. Moyer is a Rotarian. Willow Lane's one of our largest schools. We have about 700 students at that building. And then some of our smallest buildings are Albertus and Jefferson, which are about 300 students. So we have some unique dynamics within the district just in terms of those building sizes. We have 2 middle schools, Iyer and Lower Macungie Middle School. We have about 2,000 students combined at our middle level programs. And then, as you know, we have one amazing high school, Emmaus High School, which currently has about 2,800 students. And later on, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we take what might seem like a really large building and make it feel like a much more comfortable, small learning community. So I wanted to start off and share with you a little bit about our mission and our vision. And I really am not going to read this to you, but what I think is the important takeaway here is that it's about what we value as an educational community. And when we want when students graduate from the East Penn School District, we want them to be knowledgeable. And I say that in terms of knowledge takes on a lot of forms. And is it important to have some core basic understandings and skills? Without a doubt. But I hope what you appreciate about my presentation this morning is memorization of content, certainly has a role in education, but what we really embody and what we value are the skills that we know young people will need to be successful in some of the seats and the roles that you all have right now in your careers and your profession. So we value things such as students being communicators. We value things such as students being collaborators. We value students who are able to problem solve and think strategically and critically through things. So it's about what students can do with information or knowledge that they've learned, not simply regurgitate factual content back to us. And we really took that a step further in terms of starting with that basic mission and vision. And over the past, probably about 18 months, a core team of us, including community members as part of this process, really sat back and sort of evaluated our why. Like, why do we do what we do every day? And I think we all do this even as individuals. Like, what drives us in the morning? Why do we get up? And so this took us back to really our foundational beliefs again about the purpose of education. And we developed what we refer to as the portrait of an East Penn graduate. Again, after kids spend their educational career with us, which could take on a variety of duration, depending on if students move into the district at a certain point in time, or if they've had their entire 13-year career with us since kindergarten. When they leave us, what are the types of skills and attitudes that are really important? And this is what drives our work in the district. And so again, you see things on there such as collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, engaged citizens. That's certainly a focus as well as some of our recent work in terms of global citizenship and connectedness to each other and civil engagement. The other piece is attributes. And this really sort of gets at the heart of who we are as individuals. And what are the types of character skills that we want to encourage and develop in young people so that when they graduate or leave the East Penn School District, we can say they are healthy individuals, holistically healthy, that they are confident, that they are resilient, that they are reflective, that they are persistent, that they recognize we're not going to get it right the first time we try something, and that's perfectly okay. So that whole sense of a growth mindset. Compassionate, again, you see up there global awareness, which I think are many of the principles that this particular group embodies. There's some other basic information in terms of, this is really some statistical information about the students who graduate from the East Penn School District. Our typical graduating class, and this is some information from the class of 2018, and it's pretty representative. Our typical graduating class is about 675 students. Our graduation rate, which is a figure that's thrown around a lot at state and national levels, and that looks not just at a single point in time, but it actually tracks a class over the course of their high school career. And I say that simply because East Penn's graduation rate is fantastic. It's typically about 94%. We have many ways in which we recognize high achieving students, but there are some demographics in here or some information that I just wanted to share with Rotary in that about 57% of our graduates, of our seniors, leave Emmaus High School and go on to a 4-year college or university. About 21% graduate from East Penn and then go on to a 2-year college or university. 2% go into the military, and about 20% leave high school and go right into employment. Now, this is data based on immediately what students do when they leave the high school. So there might be questions in your mind like, okay, well, some of those who go into employment, do they then perhaps work for 2 years and pursue post-high school education? Certainly they might, but this just represents some basic data about what happens when our students leave Emmaus High School initially. I'm now going to leave a little bit of some student demographic piece, and we're going to start to paint the picture in terms of how we at the school district fund our graduates, the programs, how we make our educational system function. And I'll start off by saying we're going to focus on expenditures, and this is a snapshot of the 2018-19, so our current school year. As you can appreciate, we're literally in the process of developing our 19-20 budget, and that might be something as well that, again, a later point in time, someone from the district might come and share some more detailed budget information. But our 18-19 budget, our current operating budget is $153 million. In terms of expenditures, and this is a little tricky to see on the slide, but the largest pieces of the pie, so to speak, the dark blue and the orange, about 70% of our operating budget is benefits and wages. That makes sense. We're a service organization. We serve kids. We help to grow young minds. We need high quality teachers and leaders to make that happen. And so a significant portion of our budget is somewhat fixed by those personnel costs, which is an amazing investment. The other piece is, you'll see about 17%, this is the gray piece of the puzzle, is those contracted services. Again, services that we need to make the school district function. Transportation services, nutrition services, specialized health services potentially. Smaller pieces of the puzzle, you'll see, of the pie I should say, the small slither of green is capital projects, large maintenance projects for the district. And you'll see the yellow piece of the pie is our supplies and equipment, and that's about 4%. And so the big takeaway here is it's a significant budget of $153 million, but really a small portion of that gives us flexibility in terms of making decisions of funding instructional priorities. Also, in terms of those expenditures, I just wanted to break that down a little bit more for us. So we have, again, total expenditures of about $153 million. So when we look at what we spend on regular ed versus special ed instruction, you'll see that we spend about $64 million on regular ed instruction. Now, if you're thinking back to that previous slide, you might be saying, wait a minute, what does that mean? That's not adding up to me. Well, when we talk about what we spend on regular ed instruction, that means programs, people, and services that are necessary to service our regular ed students. We then also have many students in our district who have identified learning or behavioral needs, who need some more targeted supports, and they have specific plans in place, and they qualify for special education. So we also have special education services, programs, specialized teachers, sometimes it's specialized nursing services and or transportation specifically for our special ed students, and you'll see that's about $21 million. Just to give you a scope of the programs that we offer in all of our buildings, for students who have specialized learning needs, we do have special education classes in every single building. We have some students whose behaviors really impede their learning, and so we also have emotional support programs at one of our elementary buildings, both of our middle schools, and at our high school, so that we can support those students whose behaviors sometimes impede their learning. And then we also have, at one of our elementary schools, at the middle school, as well as the high school, we have specialized autistic support programs, because we do have, again, when you offer great programs, we tend to attract families as well. And so we might have families who specifically seek out some of the specialized services that they know we offer in the school district. So we have those services as well. And I also wanted to include this in there because I know there's been a lot of conversation, again, probably in the past 5 to 10 years about charter schools. East Penn funds about $5 million annually for East Penn student residents who attend a charter school. That might be a charter school that's within our school district boundaries. It could also be charter schools that are outside of the school district boundaries as well. So that's a general snapshot in terms of some of the instructional expenses within our district. The other piece, and again, the specific numbers or labels on the axes are not important. I wanted to include this because this has to deal with pensions. And I know that, as we all know, there's been quite a bit of debate about pensions in general over the past several years. And so what's important here is if you look at this graph, really what it shows is the percentage of the wages and benefits expenditures that the district spends towards PSERS. So it's basically the district's PSERS contribution to the state retirement system. If you look all the way at the left side of the graph, many years ago, we were contributing very little, and that trend was consistent across the state. you can see that and the yellow line represents what we currently spend. So in 1819, East Penn is expending about $21 million towards PSER's contribution. A portion of that we do get refunded through the state, or reimbursed through the state. If you look back about 4 or 5 years ago, you see we were contributing significantly less. And that was what really a lot of the controversy was across the state in terms of the increased costs that districts were facing towards those PSER's contributions. And I think you probably, perhaps personally, had done some reading and realized that it was really just about the way in which that system was being funded, or in essence not being funded for many years, and then there was this need to appropriately fund the system. The great thing, if there is a positive side to the PSER's conversation, if you look to the right of the yellow line there of the 21 million, the projections for our PSER's contributions at East Penn and across the state have remained relatively stable. That's a really good thing to happen with regard to financial planning. So we can anticipate about how much we will continue to need to allocate towards our pensions. And then also when you look at, so that was expenditures, we talked about how much we're spending. When we look at our revenues, again, it's actually kind of great that we can't see the labels on the graph, because the purpose of this is to really emphasize that about 3/4 of East Penn's programs are funded by local tax dollars. They are funded by all of you and our school community. A smaller portion, about 24% of our revenues, come from the state level, and then that tiny little sliver is the federal government. We won't get into that. But again, it's really just the nature of public education and how public ed is funded. So that gives you a sense of how we fund and support our programs financially. Yes?
Since you're moving off the budgetary piece,
Yes.
I just did the math there. So if I saw that right, at $153 million budget and 8,000 kids in the school district, it's cost you about $19,000 plus per student in the school.
You must be an accountant or something.
I'm not, I am a 10 graduate. So the rhetorical question.
Oh, even better, yes, thank you.
The rhetorical question I ask is, would anybody pay $19,000 in tuition to go to East Penn School District?
I would.
Yes. I would.
All right. Okay.
Okay, next question.
By the way, can I add, JP, that's per family.
No, that's per student.
But I understand, but if you had 4 students, you'd be paying $19,000.
No, when you divide 153 million by 8,000, it's $19,000 a head.
That's true, but people who don't have children are paying taxes, right?
Well, that's true, yeah, but I'm just saying, that's your cost per student in the school. You had to charge tuition to run the school district, that's what you'd have to collect per head. And you'd have financial aid and endowments and everything, but that's what you have to collect per head to run the school district.
But you're saving the state a lot of money, because you're not gonna have some of these people incarcerated. They're gonna have good educations and get jobs.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question about the demographics of students going on to college. Your slide said 57% go on to 4-year colleges and 21% go on to 2-year colleges. How does that compare to historically, say 10, 15, 20 years back and so on? Because the number seems a little low from my perspective. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have that historical data right in front of me, but I will say I would certainly expect, just based on some, again, if we go back that time period that you mentioned, like 5 to 10 years, and some of the impact that has happened with regard to state educational systems and higher ed in general, and how college tuition rates have certainly in some areas really inflated. That certainly could have an impact on just the financial piece on the families that are the students who are able or not able to attend those 4-year colleges. But it's actually even at about 57%. When you look at the students who are going to 4-year and then you combine that with the students who are going to 2 years, to have such a significant portion of our students who are going on to higher education right out of high school, that's certainly still above like a national average.
it seems like it went down from my perspective. My wife was in the school system for 35 years, and we always expected great results for the amount of children that went on to college and so on. It just seemed a little low, maybe.
I mean, and certainly we can get that longitudinal data in terms of how was that number different, perhaps 10 or even 20 years ago. Yes?
But I think when you look at the cost of higher education,
right,
not every parent can afford anymore to send a kid to four-year college. True.
And as I pointed out as well, the interesting piece about that particular statistic is, don't forget, when we talk about rising costs of higher education, we know that some of those students who leave and go right into the workforce will potentially then take a path that leads them to some sort of higher education, whether it's a 4-year, whether it's a 2-year, some sort of technical certification. I think that's the other really interesting piece here, like students' pathways are changing. I think as in general, we have a community and a society that's recognizing that there is a need for a skill set at times that perhaps a technical pathway can certainly fulfill that. So at this point, now that we've talked a little bit about some of the funding structure of the district, I wanted to share with you some highlights of some programs that we have recently initiated in the district and really ultimately are aimed towards, if you think back to our mission about creating students who are problem solvers, collaborators, and critical thinkers, really just producing those well-rounded students and citizens. So one of those programs is this year is the inaugural or initial year of implementing full-day kindergarten for all students in the East Penn School District. So we are incredibly proud of our full-day kindergarten program. And again, the whole premise of our full-day kindergarten program is about understanding the developmental needs of 5-year-olds. And how a full-day classroom really is appropriate for those students to meet their learning needs. So many people might say, oh my gosh, you have 5-year-olds in school for 6 hours, like don't they get tired? And so again, thinking about developmentally, how do young kids learn, and how do we as educators then meet them where they are and teach them in appropriate ways. So we talk a lot about purposeful play and hands-on learning activities. Very different, I didn't say free play, so it's not just a, hey, go play for a couple hours. But I think the important piece here is it is not students sitting at desks or tables for sustained periods of time doing worksheets, but it does provide us sustained blocks of time in which teachers can be interacting with young learners in small groups around specifically designed learning materials and having high-level conversations about reading, about math, about science, about social studies. So we're very proud of our full-day kindergarten program, and certainly we'll be bringing back some information as well, an update to our board throughout the school year in terms of what we're seeing in terms of gains in student learning in that program. Something else that we've been focusing on in East Penn is, the acronym is STEM. It's really stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. You might also hear STEAM. There are some schools of thought that throw the arts in there. And STEM is really based on, again, the design and the engineering and the integration of those 4 and/or 5 content areas and the way in which they really interact and impact almost everything that we do in the world. So we've been very intentional in East Penn and very deliberate in terms of STEM-based learning experiences in our district. And at the elementary level, some of these pictures might be tricky to see, but in kindergarten through 5th grade, so I point that out, like yes, in kindergarten, we have kindergartners who are actually involved in coding. There are the robots that you see up there are referred to as dot robots. And our students actually have the abilities to engage in early coding, understanding that I can program something else to do a task that I needed to do, and the thought process and the design and the engineering and the critical thinking that goes into that. We also have in our buildings what is referred to as maker spaces, and you probably have heard that term before. Sort of the makerspace movement has sort of swept the country. Again, based on the development of principles of design and engineering and providing students with purposeful materials. At the very primary level, it might be things such as Legos. At the intermediate level, it might be things such as wires and circuits connected to devices to be able to make them go or to make them work. And so providing students with makerspace opportunities in which they have to work in small groups with materials and design and produce and do something or create something new. Also, I have up there a little bit about our science program, which is focused really on the concept of inquiry. Again, if you think back to our mission and our vision, it's not about telling students specific content to memorize as much as it is encouraging and challenging students to think critically about things. So that whole concept of natural inquiry, curiosity, and providing students with appropriate learning experiences to complete those investigations. At the secondary level, with regard to STEM, we tend to see there the gradual introduction of more formalized computer science classes. And so we do have computer science courses in which students engage. We have robotics courses as well as a robotics team that does actually typically places nationally. We have technology education classes, and another strand of coursework that we offer at the high school is referred to as Project Lead the Way, which is the name of the specific curriculum. But through Project Lead the Way, high school students have the opportunity to participate in one of several courses, including engineering, design, environmental sustainability, computer integrated manufacturing. So again, just some higher level coursework in that technical area. Another area in which we're really proud is the way in which our district is working to really change teaching and learning in classrooms. And so if you think back to potentially the education that you or I may have had, we think of an elementary classroom or a secondary classroom, we think of students sitting in rows, teacher in the front, maybe writing notes, doing direct instruction for the entire 45-minute block of time. And my goal as a student was to take in all that information and to memorize it and maybe regurgitate it at some point in time. We're really shifting our vision for teaching and learning in which students are active, engaged participants. The teacher is a facilitator of that learning process, not the complete director. And so again, through a one-to-one program, and what that means is each student has a device, a technology device, we are able to provide students with learning experiences that we couldn't otherwise provide them. When I say one-to-one, I mean in grades 6 through 12, every student is issued a Chromebook to use throughout the entire day as well as to take home with them at night. In grades 3 through 5, every student is issued an iPad. And then in kindergarten through 2nd grade, we have shared iPads. So we have about one iPad for every 2 students because kids are typically working in smaller groups. It's not about the technology. It's not about the device. It's about how the device changes the types of activities in which kids are able to engage. They're able to create, they're able to design, they're able to collaborate, they're able to network and learn information, not just within the walls of the East Penn classrooms, but outside as well. I also want to highlight just a few teaching and learning opportunities that are happening at Emmaus High School that are a bit unique. We talked before about the large size of our high school. And I bring that up because I've heard that quite a bit in the community. And something that we've tried to do is create smaller learning communities within a larger space so that students feel valued, they feel connected, they feel as if there are individuals in that building who truly care about them and know them as individuals. And so we've created a 9th grade academy. It's really a very simple concept, one that we've learned from other school districts in which we have a core group of teachers who teach just 9th grade students. And it's similar to a middle school model in which there might be a group of us right here, and we're a 9th grade team, and we might share about 120 students. I teach science, you might teach math, you might teach language arts. The beauty of it is we have a common planning time regularly. We can sit down and we can talk about our group of kids, who's doing well, who's struggling academically, who's struggling socially, who do we want to connect with and say, hey, come talk to me ninth period, I want to find out what's going on. And we've also begun to look at some of the coursework and perhaps redesigning some of our courses at ninth grade to specifically ease that transition between 8th and 9th grade. Two other things, we have a virtual East Penn Academy, we refer to it as VESPA, but it is an East Penn developed and run cyber program. So we talked before about students who leave or perhaps are in a charter or cyber school outside of East Penn. We know that we can provide equally high quality online learning. And so we do have an online learning program. We have about 65 students who currently participate in it, and when they graduate, they have an East Penn diploma. This is a really big list. I don't want you to read these individually. The important takeaway here, this is a list of the co-curricular and extracurricular opportunities just at Emmaus High School. Just at Emmaus High School. The lists for both of our middle schools are equally as long. This does not include sports and athletics, band. So what I point out to you here is, when you think, again, back to our mission and our portrait of an East Penn graduate, we value academics, we value learning, we value students being well-rounded contributors to their society, and we know that we need them to participate in such activities. I highlighted Interact there for our group as well, because we know that is in essence, I'm gonna say, feeder program or our young Rotarians. And that club is alive and well at Emmaus High School. We have about 80 students who participate. They're required to do 4 community service activities throughout the year. Many do far, far more than that. Things such as gift baskets for needy families, volunteering at Special Olympic events, volunteering at some of our elementary buildings. I know they've been active at Willow Lane Elementary, as well as just in the East Penn and greater community. So we're very proud of our Interact Club. And there was a question as well that came up just about, with this many clubs and activities, plus sports, our kids, do they feel torn between the two? Like, in other words, do some activities pull kids more than others? And the one thing of which I'm incredibly proud is our staff is very flexible. So if you are an athlete, you can still be involved in Interact or any one of the variety of clubs. We've really gotten away from trying to, I have a 12-year-old who's involved in a community sport that's pretty intense, and so I appreciate that it seems to be at younger ages, we almost like put kids in situations where you can either do X or Y, but you can't do them both. And so we still try very hard to encourage kids to be involved in as many activities as they can and work with their schedules. Finally, a question that groups often have is how you can continue to remain connected with us. And I want to point out that we have a great website. Laura Brown, who's our community liaison, is a Rotarian. She is a phenomenal community resource. We also are on social media if you are engaged in organizations that way. The other piece is we are always open and receptive to calls, to visits. If you have a knowledge base, a skill set, a talent that you think you could offer us, we are open and willing to collaborate with you. The other piece that I wanted to mention before I end is we are incredibly fortunate to have a foundation, which is not directly connected with the school district. They are a separate entity, a separate nonprofit. However, they exist for the sole benefit of supporting programs and students at the East Penn School District. Their mission has been very much supporting our STEM education and have done a phenomenal job in a short amount of time. So if you're not familiar with our foundation, I strongly encourage that you maybe start there and learn a bit more about that. So thank you. I was trying to be very mindful of the time.
If you have some questions, Kristen will be here for a couple minutes. So she just mentioned the East Penn Foundation. We have a a special Rotarian who is the president of the East Penn Foundation, Sal Brastro. John Zayats is the treasurer. Are there any other Rotarians on that board?
Laura Groves, our community liaison, she's on it, and Bryce is one of our members.
So, guys, we actively participate both here and in the school district right now. If you want any information, see Sal. They do a heck of a job. So, Kristen, thank you very much. Could all please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,